Okay, welcome guys. Welcome back to another video. It is September 30th, 2024. It's Monday. So, a lot's happened in the past week, at least in the tropics. We've had Hurricane Helene, which made a Category 4 landfall in the Big Bend in Florida around Perry. I'll draw its track here, just for you guys to see it. It started its journey down here. It tracked like this, and then bent right back in and did something like this. Its center died a little bit further west in here. I think it died over here as it got sucked into the upper level low that was from the trough. Helene has caused plenty of damage along the Big Bend of Florida here, and it has caused catastrophic flooding in the southern Appalachian Mountains, or Appalachian Mountains, depending on how you pronounce it, of western North Carolina, northwestern South Carolina, and northeast Georgia. A lot of roads washed out. People cannot reach their families. No cell service, no power, and for some people, even no food or supplies. The only real way to get in is helicopter, and a lot of key infrastructure is down the ultra quartz mine factory that supplies a lot of that makes quartz for a lot of world's semiconductors is also isolated. So that may have impacts on the global economy within the next few months. Also, in the Eastern Pacific, what has happened is John made landfall as a rapidly intensifying Category 3 hurricane around this area of Mexico, I believe. I need a bigger marker here. But it made landfall east of Acapulco, which I believe is around this area. It mainly got its enhancement from the mountains of Mexico in this area. It was expected to make a tropical storm landfall in this bay, but when I actually made the video, it made landfall 20 miles east of Acapulco, dropped a ton of rain, reformed offshore, and made a second landfall in Mexico, I believe. And it dropped over 40 inches plus of rain in this area. It was a bit overshadowed by Helene, but both caused catastrophic flooding in their respective areas. So Helene caused catastrophic flooding in the United States, and John created catastrophic flooding in southern Mexico, especially in the Guerrero state. Nothing in the Central Pacific right now, but we're gonna go over what's happened in the Atlantic so far. We have Isaac up here, which was a Category 2 hurricane down here. It's fairly high north for its status as a hurricane. Joyce formed a few days ago and is weakening as it's moving further into the Central Atlantic. Kirk is expected to become a major hurricane as it moves out to sea. It's supposed to be a very large major hurricane as it moves northward in the tropical Atlantic. And then there's this inverse area behind Kirk that could develop within the next few days. If I check the probabilities, could develop in the next 2 days and has a chance to develop this week. This one we may need to watch because the Euro model, for example, has the storm center, low pressure, not getting strong super quickly and then having the opportunity to go further west before maybe making a northward turn, because there is a weakness here after Isaac is plowed through the pattern, and Kirk is also going to be moving up there. So the longer this stays weak, the more of a chance it has a chance of impacting the Eastern Caribbean, although we are not sure about that just yet. Every other storm should stay out to sea though. This system in the Caribbean will be another Central American gyro tropical wave system. The environment in this area, at least sea surface temperature wise, is still very conducive for tropical cyclones, but the atmosphere will need to cooperate for this to develop. Obviously, if it can start developing in the Caribbean and actually maintain it, it will have a much easier time once it does get into the Gulf, when it does have to face other factors. But for right now, the trends in the forecast have been downtrending for Kirk at the moment. So we mentioned Isaac, Joyce, and Kirk. Kirk, I'll just show you guys not the landfall, but its cone. So it's expected to shoot off into the North Atlantic this way and become a powerful major hurricane. If we check the forecast discussion, it's not expected to impact land directly, but just because it won't impact land directly, that doesn't mean you won't feel rip currents from this system pushing westward into the Caribbean, also eastward towards Africa, and maybe also rip currents impacting the east coast of the United States. That is still possible. So it will be advised that if there's a rip current advisory in your area, that you stay out of the ocean. That's the best thing that you can be doing. From a forecast discussion perspective, Kirk is supposed to get to around a strong Cat 3, maybe low on Cat 4 status within the next 3 to 4 days before it starts weakening. So as ideal conditions, it's far away from land, so for season purposes, we kind of want this to strengthen, because if it strengthens more, number one, it's something good that we can track that's not going to affect anybody, and it will open up the path more, so the potential system behind it will also get pulled more to the north as well. Alright, so that's what we're looking at in the Atlantic. Eastern Pacific systems I have not really read too much on, but this system south of Mexico, Western system, has a 70% chance of developing within the next week. I will show some model data on this. I haven't looked at too much. An area of low pressure is expected to develop off the coast of southwestern Mexico during the next day or so. After that time, environmental conditions are expected to be generally conducive for additional development, and a tropical depression is likely to form by the middle or later portions of this week. Disturbances are forecast to meander near or just offshore the Mexican coast for much of the week, and then begin moving slowly west-northwestward to parallel the coast of Mexico by this weekend. Regardless of development, this system is expected to contribute to heavy rainfall across portions of southwest Mexico already adversely affected by substantial rainfall last week. So that's the main messages with this system. Also, this other system here, another area in the Gulf of Tehuantepec is currently producing disorganized showers, thunderstorms mainly offshore of Mexico. Heavy rain is possible along the most of the coast of southern Mexico and North Central America throughout this week. So the systems, regardless if they do develop, will continue to add a rainfall into areas soaked by Hurricane John, which is not ideal because they already are suffering from catastrophic flooding. So more rain is not beneficial. But this western system is likely to parallel the coast of Mexico. Not like that. Like the parallel the coast of Mexico. Like this. I believe more like this. It shouldn't make a direct landfall on Mexico, but it will be paralleling the coast and be close enough to bring rain impacts to the coastline. The last area we're going to talk about, where we're actually going to focus the majority of our effort, is Typhoon Krathon. I'm trying to remember how you say this properly, but I'm going to say Krathon. That's how I'm going to say the name. So, this is Jebi. Also tropical storm Jebi, I believe. Yes. This is moving off the coast of Japan. It's going to pass east of Japan, so it won't make a direct landfall. But this cone's still wide enough, so maybe if it makes a little bit of more of a westward pass towards eastern Japan, some of these tropical storm force winds that we see here may spread on shore a little bit, especially in the eastern Tokyo area. But it's more likely that the tropical storm force winds of the storm stay just offshore and Jebi moves out to sea, but it will bring rain impacts and it will bring rip currents and some strong gusty winds to the coastline, regardless of whether it's a direct impact or not. So this is still something to keep an eye on if you're in eastern Japan. And then eventually in these Russian Japanese islands, I'm not sure who owns what. And then eventually, as Jebi moves into the rest of the North Pacific, this could change the pattern over North America. So this is something to look out for. Now, Krathon. Krathon is here. It started as this low pressure system that sank down south. And ever since, it's been a tropical cyclone that passed through the Luzon Strait and is now a super typhoon with winds of around 145 miles per hour. The kilometers per hour, I need a conversion stat on that. Probably use a calculator for it. But it's expected to move westward a little bit more before making a northeastern turn into Taiwan proper. So we're going to be discussing this for the majority of the video. Whether it makes a more westward turn and enters the Taiwan Strait before it makes a landfall in Taiwan, or if it makes a sharper turn, a little bit of a sharper eastward turn, and that will bring more, not that big, and that will bring more winds onto the eastern side of Taiwan and pile up the rainfall on this side of the island more than the western side. So we'll look over that now. Look over that in like a little bit from now. So this is the current Atlantic picture. As you can see, this would have been this. You can't see it here, but Helene's remnants, or Helene's center, is basically gone, but it's merged with this upper level low, which is sitting right here. This right here, I believe is Isaac here. This is Isaac. This is Joyce. This is Kirk to be, and this is that tropical system behind it. The Caribbean system is sitting somewhere down here, just for reference. So as we take this out over the next 5 days, we'll slowly move it through. The GFS has down in the Caribbean a low pressure system developing, and the low pressure system developing in the Eastern Pacific as well. Kirk is really getting its act together and becoming a hurricane. Isaac is merging into the upper level pattern in the northern Atlantic, and it's going to be pushing towards Western Europe with its precipitation. This system behind Kirk hasn't started developing yet, mainly because there's shear coming off of Kirk. I'll draw that in different color. There's shear coming off of Kirk that's going to be overcutting the system. So Kirk will have to move north. We'll have to move north far enough for it to actually begin to strengthen, which it starts doing here. Now, in 72 hours out, 3 days from now, on Thursday, 12Z, Kirk is approaching major hurricane status. Joyce is gone, but there are some mid-latitude storms coming off the U.S. East Coast and Canada that are pulling Kirk up to the north and should guide it away from land. As you can also see, this system back here is starting to develop as Kirk shears maybe still probably overcutting the system, but it's not directly right next to Kirk. We have this tropical depression in the western Caribbean that's slowly moving up into the Gulf, and we have this tropical system trying to organize off the coast of southern Mexico, but the main thing that we're seeing there is heavy rainfall. If you keep this going out another few hours to 96, that tropical depression that enters Gulf really disintegrates, and by day 5 it's not really an organized system, but there is precipitation in the Gulf, so that's still something that we have to watch. By this time, Kirk is a major hurricane, a large one at that is inside the central tropical Atlantic and is beginning to recurve. And this system behind it, which could be Leslie, is also turning into an intense storm. While the western Atlantic and eastern Pacific, we're not seeing a defined area of circulation, but we're seeing a lot of precipitation hanging around. And for places like Mexico or areas in Florida that just got impacted, or Florida specifically, at least for right now, this isn't a good thing. Extra rain on top of water damage that's already occurred is not great. So any impacts are bad impacts in this case. And we can probably look at other models to see what's going to happen. But we'll stop at 5 days. We will use the CMC model next. So We'll zoom back out. So, CMC, similar thing. Isaac here, Kirk here. Kirk's a little bit weaker on this model than it should be. Joyce here, and then the system behind. The Canadian has Kirk organizing, but not as quickly as the official NHE forecast is. And it also has a system behind it developing quicker. Developing a little bit quicker. On the Canadian run around Thursday into Friday, we have this tropical system trying to develop in the Eastern Pacific. This is probably the Eastern X system, and that's moving into the Gulf of Tehuantepec, adding to the rainfall totals in Central America and Southern Mexico. Whereas that Caribbean system is not really there. It's somewhat showing on the isobar map where we see a little kink there, but it's not a defined low pressure system that can efficiently take care of its environment. One clue that we could probably use to figure out if that's why a storm system is struggling, we could look at wind shear. Now, if we look at this right now, there is some wind shear over the Caribbean right now. But as we go out and that potential storm moves into this area, there's a slackening in the wind shear here. Some wind shear is still present, but there's a little slackening there. And then as that storm moves in, this upper level anticyclone really starts building in and fanning out. So it really depends whether that Caribbean system actually gets an organized center of circulation that actually has convection to organize. If it could actually get into this type of environment, it would do well because it has a good ventilation profile, but it really depends if it can actually get organized before that point. Kirk has it. Kirk, we can easily see it. Kirk has this outflow that's shooting all around it, and that's also interrupting this system down here. So Kirk has the outflow system. But the question is, does this Caribbean system, if it does develop at all, does it have a similar setup? And if it does, how long does it maintain that? The tropical system in the Eastern Pacific has some wind shear with it, but it also has less shear than just to the south of it. But that might be due to like the monsoon trough and this wind shear coming from this upper level anticyclone wrapping around. We keep this going full 5 days. Kirk begins to turn out to sea and gets moved into upper level pattern around day 7. Whereas this tiny storm, this storm behind it, is a little bit further west at day 7. Still need to watch that. But it starts intensifying more in the long range. But it depends how far south the storm behind Kirk comes off and whether it actually begins turning. So we will keep an eye on that as well. We'll check the Euro AI model. I'm not sure we have all the hours available though. We have some hours available, but we don't have every single one, unfortunately. So we're skipping hours. A lot of hours we're skipping. But we'll see with the limited data. We'll see what we can find. Yeah, the AI Euro model has Kirk as a major hurricane, but we're not really seeing anything in the Gulf per se. We're seeing a broad area around the 5th round of 5 days out around Saturday that tries to get going in the Gulf. But even then, it doesn't seem like it actually intensifies that quickly. It stays broad. Those Eastern Pacific systems also seem to stay broad as well and not strengthen too quickly. But also, this is in the longer range with the storm, but potential Leslie behind Kirk doesn't necessarily, at least according to AI Euro model, and this is quite far out, doesn't necessarily get pulled out like Kirk does. It goes west because we have this high pressure system sitting on top of it. So this is still going to be something we have to watch. Upper level dynamic look. I mean, it still has the chance to turn out, but it doesn't have that wide opening that Kirk does. Kirk has his wide open because Isaac has cleared the path for it to go out. But her future, Leslie, by the time Kirk is in the Northern Atlantic, Kirk is way over here. And this ridge is trying to build, and the ridge tries to build back in. So while this is far out, if a ridge does build back in, potential Leslie will be a big problem because it will be heading towards land masses. We don't know for sure yet, but I'll provide another update later in the week. But that's what we know so far, right? Eastern Pacific, we kind of already went over that with this shot. We don't need to really see the Central Pacific at all. So we'll hop over straight to the Western Pacific. I will prefer the East Asia map, but it's a bit harder on me. So let's switch to GFS. Okay. So we're already here. We already have a Super Typhoon it's already in the Luzon Strait. Now, this trough is coming down. It's going to put a break in the ridge here. And if we fast forward this for Typhoon Krathon, that opens up a gateway over northeast China. The trough axis moves. So now you have a trough that's here. So that breaks down the ridge. So Krathon stops its westward movement and begins to make the turn. Now, when it makes the turn, it's quite crucial to impacts on Taiwan itself. Because a later westward turn would bring landfall further north. A faster eastward turn will bring the storm closer to the southern tip of Taiwan and bring more winds directly onto eastern Taiwan. A slower eastward turn would bring the storm farther north up the Taiwanese coastline before a potential landfall. So, if we're going to look at those scenarios here, because we already mentioned the cone. No, we're going to start looking at the storm more in depth here. Also, as you can also see, Jebi scrapes the coast of Japan as it's like a tropical storm, almost typhoon strength, scraping by Japan. But we're going to focus on Taiwan, so we're going to look for East Asia might be beneficial. Yeah, East Asia, we can see the system a bit better. Yeah, so Krathon's supposed to slow down as it's making this turn towards Taiwan. That may erode a bit of its strength as it upwells cooler water and deals with land interaction, but that will prolong the rate of flooding. If we watch here, at least according to the GFS, Krathon hangs around Taiwan for about its center. Hangs around Taiwan for about the next 4 days. And in that time is bringing very heavy rainfall to the southern end of Taiwan. As it's stalling and slowing down. The CMC, I didn't want to click that model, but the CMC, check that. CMC has the typhoon. It's weaker it's much weaker on here than it is in real life, but it has the storm strengthening a little bit and making a landfall over Taiwan, and then just hanging around over the center of Taiwan, piling up the rainfall amounts before it moves out into the East China Sea. And this has a more central landfall, where it makes landfall right over the southern tip of Taiwan, and then brings the storm center over to Taiwan proper. Well, both bring over Taiwan proper, but it brings it over around central Taiwan. So the wind to wrap around onto the coastline, onto the eastern coastline of Taiwan, will bring this extremely heavy rainfall that we're seeing here, which is hard for you guys to see, but I'll highlight it with some yellow. It's bringing this super heavy rainfall into eastern Taiwan. But the circulation is also wrapping around and bringing increased rainfall into both western Taiwan as well. Now, it depends. in this situation, with the wind flow going like this, eastern Taiwan's going to get a heavy rainfall, but the southern mountains of eastern Taiwan may not. So if we pull up the map of Taiwan, for example, not this, but we look here. A landfall, a more eastward, a faster eastward turn will bring Typhoon Krathon's landfall closer to Fenglao and closer to the southern tip of Taiwan. So if that were to happen, that would technically be worst case scenario for people on this tip, because that would mean more surge on the westward side coming in and more surge on the eastern side of Taiwan piling up the water. But that also means, at least from a wind direction perspective, so you like scroll further up the coast here. I can actually open this in another tab. So let me open image in a new tab. See if this works. Okay, there we go. But because the wind is going to be also moving, storm center is like, we'll put storm center here, and then the wind's just going to be wrapping around like this, for example. Then that would mean a lot more wind is going to be pushing up into eastern Taiwan around Taitung City, Jinlun, Fuli, Yuli, Chunggong, and Changbin. So more wind is going to be pushing into the eastern coast of Taiwan. And because the mountains in eastern Taiwan are fairly high, that means a lot of heavy rainfall will be experienced along the mountains here, just west of Yuli, Fuli, Chunggong. I think that's Dufan there. So a lot of heavy rain will be experienced in addition to surge coming off the Philippine Sea here. So any water that's falling in the mountains will have a harder time getting out. And that will also mean that you'll probably expect catastrophic flooding from rainfall in eastern Taiwan under this scenario. But that also means, because we have wind running up against the mountains and then pulling off of Taiwan like this up here, right? Something like that. Then that would mean less rainfall over central Taiwan, because the wind direction is moving on the leeward side of the island. But if the landfall point is closer to Kaohsiung City, for example, if it's closer to Kaohsiung City, and then it makes a slow track over the center of Taiwan, now there's chance for catastrophic flooding on both sides of the island, because you're gonna have the strong fetch of wind moving and uplifting on the eastern side of Taiwan, and you're gonna have winds from the center wrapping over the mountains and inducing heavy rainfall over western side of Taiwan as well. And it also means more wind's going to impact more heavily populated areas of Taiwan. And it's going to be more surge prone because the Taiwan Strait is less deep than the Philippine Sea over here. Right? And if we go back to tropical tidbits, from what we can see, if we do a hurricane model, let's see like the GFS, for example. Let's go to Krathon. And we look for landfall point. What we're seeing is the storm moves westward and makes landfall. Well, it doesn't make landfall exactly, but it stalls around Kaohsiung City. So, in this case, the heavy rain will be heaviest in eastern Taiwan, but you're still going to have rain that's going to be funneling over the mountains on the western side as well, on the GFS run. If we take the CMC run, I can't take the CMC run. We'll take a Euro model run, if we can. Take a Euro model run. If we look at the Euro already has the storm offshore by this point, 72 hours out. It doesn't have it moving as slow. But, as you can see, the Euro takes a very strong typhoon It's 9:58, 9:59, like a major typhoon, still into the western side of southwestern coast of Taiwan, around Kaohsiung City. So, a lot of heavy rain is going to be on eastern Taiwan, and then as the center Krathon moves over central Taiwan, if we keep moving forward here, that overshadows a lot of its heavy rain over central Taiwan as it moves up. Now, the center is moving around a lot, but it moves a lot of its heavy rain to the center of Taiwan, and that brings heavy rain to almost the entire island as it eventually moves out. Right? And I know you guys can see that. So if we look at precip, well, I can't look at total precip, but we could look at, can't look at it here, so I'll use GFS for precip. If it gives that option to me. It does not. But just in general, a lot of this heavy rain, from what we're seeing, is heavily focused in southeastern Taiwan. And if the storm moves, makes this landfall closer to Kaohsiung City, or Gangshan, or Tainan City, probably closer to Kaohsiung. If it makes a landfall there, that means heavy rainfall will be on both sides of Taiwan. There may be less rain in northern Taiwan, but there will be heavy catastrophic flooding for rainfall on both sides of Taiwan, while western Taiwan is experiencing typhoon-force winds along the coastline and pretty far inland as the storm's moving slow. The storm's going to be moving slow, so they're going to be feeling these impacts for hours on end. Right? If we look at a hurricane model, for example, let's see like HAFS A, Krathon. We'll only look at HAFS A and look at 3. We'll look at HMON, HAFS A, HAFS B, and HWRF. HAFS A has Krathon weakening slowly on its approach to Taiwan. Weakening actually quite substantially, but still, the main thing with this is that the storm's still going to be intense by the time it's approaching western Taiwan. But you can see here, a later eastward turn brings the storm into the Taiwan Strait. So there's going to be more rain funneling along the eastern coast of Taiwan and on the western coast of Taiwan, rather. And more surge as well because of that. More water's going to be forced up. But also, more rain's going to be training along the east coast of Taiwan, so there still will be heavy rain in the mountains here as well, for example. And this brings heavier rainfall across most of western Taiwan and less over eastern Taiwan. That brings a lot of heavy rain into Taipei and just along the entire western coast of Taiwan and keeps the impacts, at least from the wind, high on most of the coastline. That's the HAFS A model. If we look at, that's the HAFS A model. And if we were to look at wind, for example, 10-meter wind, in this scenario, hurricane force winds are continuing to scrape the coast of western Taiwan up to about, where is that? Up to about Taichung City. So hurricane force winds, or typhoon force winds, continue to scrape the coastline up until Taichung City before Krathon really weakens down its wind field. But the rain will still be a big threat. As it's an intense storm, now it's going to be carrying this large it's going to be carrying a large amount of water and wind with it anyway. So even though it's weakening off a very high peak, it's going to be weakening slowly, or maybe a category 2 before Taiwan. That's still going to bring a lot of heavy rain, still going to bring typhoon force winds, and it's still going to be bringing a decent storm surge with that, especially if it rides the western coast of Taiwan. If we look at HMON, which doesn't do it, or look at Krathon and HWRF. For the HWRF parent, we see a similar thing, although Krathon weakens a lot more and has a completely different landfall location that goes into China. in southeastern China. I don't believe this as much, but it's still a possibility, so we'll look at it. But we'll look at HAF's B model. I can't even check it. But yeah, just a general thing from what we've seen from JGWC, which the warning graphic is here. Although the cone extends in China, the most likely scenario is that Krathon is weakening off its high peak now. It weakens as it's approaching Taiwan, but the main thing is that it will be carrying a surge and at least a decent amount of some of its strength with it as it makes a landfall in southwestern Taiwan, or it scrapes the west coast of Taiwan and keeps the surge up for longer. A further east turn for Krathon will mean a lot more flooding in eastern Taiwan. A further west track will keep surge up in the Taiwan Strait. Also have some surge in China with wind field as well, because the wind field is massive here. You'd also have a lot more rainfall along the western mountains of Taiwan, going right through the center of the island, for example. Whereas a down the middle track where it makes actual landfall in southwestern Taiwan will bring heavy rain to eastern Taiwan and will bring heavy rain and strong winds into southwestern Taiwan and further inland. The heavy rain will probably stay longer than hurricane force winds, and typhoon force winds, but still. The absolute worst case scenario would be a southwest landfall around Kaesong, right? A landfall there will keep rain heavy in eastern Taiwan, will bring storm surge to a populated area of Taiwan, and it would also extend those strong winds and that heavy rainfall further onto the western portion of Taiwan as well. So that will add more damage. But either scenario is bad. But if you live on eastern Taiwan, a western track is much better for you, ideally, as the wind will not be pushing directly onshore. A westward track like this would still bring moisture in like this, but once the storm is at your level or it's north of you, the wind will be blowing offshore. Whereas if the storm is actually over Taiwan, then heaviest rain will still be moving onto you. Will still be moving onto you for pretty much the entire time. So yeah, guys, I hope you guys learned something from this update. I know it's quite long, and I know I don't explain things the best, but that's pretty much what we talked about. So if you're in Taiwan, prepare for Typhoon Krathon. Prepare for potential catastrophic flooding in eastern Taiwan. Prepare for the rainfall. If you're along the coastline, prepare for high waves, prepare for the wind, prepare for the storm surge. And if you're further inland in Taiwan, prepare for some damaging wind, but mostly prepare for the flooding. Prepare for the flooding is the main thing, because Krathon will be moving so slow that the rainfall totals will really pile up over Taiwan. So that's the main thing I want you guys to keep in mind. The storm, just like with John, Helene, although these are different storms, the wind will die down first as Krathon is weakening. However, because it is slow moving and because it is also a large system, those winds will be over pretty much the entire island, and the heavy rainfall will be intense, especially in those mountainous areas. So it's very important that you guys keep an eye on the forecast for your local area. This is supposed to make landfall in Taiwan on Wednesday. I believe for them it's Wednesday morning there, maybe Tuesday night, my time. Maybe Tuesday afternoon night, my time. Wednesday morning, afternoon for them. So just something that you guys should keep in mind. Prepare for the flooding, prepare for the wind, and prepare for just storm surge in general from Krathon if you live in Taiwan, and then also give an update for those who live in the Japanese islands as well. I believe those are Ryukyu Islands, so I'll give an update for you guys as well. Alright, see you guys later. I'm about to make maybe another video talking about something else. So, hope this video is informative, and I'll catch you guys next time. Goodbye.